Hey y'all, thank you so much for watching today. My name is Adalia from PerfectStylishCuts.com, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use Silhouette Studio, the basic free edition, with your DXF files that you download. So this is going to be a very simple thing to do. I'm just going to go ahead and show you how you can go ahead and separate the elements as well as group them to be able to cut them in different colors. We will also go ahead and discuss just certain tips, of how you can go ahead and cut these things and layer them in the different colors. I received that question a lot from you guys. So the first thing that you will need to do for this is download, of course, your file that we want to use. Today I'm going to use it's Friday, y'all. It's actually a free file on my website that you can go ahead and download at perfectstylishcuts.com. It's in the freebie section, and it is just adorable with that margarita glass. Who doesn't like Fridays or margaritas, y'all? All right, so let's go ahead and unzip this. You can go ahead and do so by just right-clicking on the file or on the folder and hitting Extract All. Select a place where you would like for these files to go. In my case, I'm just going to hit my desktop so that they're easily accessible, and then hit Extract. All right, and this will actually show you the files that you have, which in this case are going to be the DXF file, the EPS file, which is for other cutting machines, the PNG file, which is just a transparent image of the file that you purchased, the SVG file, which you can use with Designer Edition. If you can afford the upgrade, I definitely recommend it. The SVG files are just a ton easier to use. And then, of course, the README First notepad, which just kind of includes some of my terms and conditions for using my files specifically. It addresses commercial use and personal use and what you can and cannot do. Please do read this before using my files. All right, so let's go ahead and get back to the studio, to Silhouette Studio. And let's go ahead and go to File, Open, select the DXF file and bring that in. I am also going to bring in the SVG file just so that we can compare both different kinds of files. You can do this by going to File, Merge. If you ever wanted to put something else into your same studio, you can go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and try the SVG file, and I'll move it to the side as well. And you can right away tell the differences between both of these files. Obviously, with the DXF, it looks a little bit more complicated because you can only see the cut lines and you cannot see fill colors. And that is a big difference, but we will go ahead and address how you can go ahead and fix that, okay? All right, so the SVG file is pretty awesome because basically, if you wanted to cut this in the different colors, what I would do is that I would just select all of my black items, for example, like this, right? And hit shift and select them all, and then I'd put them on my mat and cut the black stuff, and then I'd move that off to the side, and then I'd get my green stuff and move it onto the mat, cut that stuff, of course, and I'm pretty much ready to go. I could just layer that on a t-shirt or whatever I was going to use. It's very easy to use the SVG file. That's why I always say if you can afford the Designer Edition, go for it. It just makes life a ton easier. Okay, but back to the DXF file. So with the DXF file, the first thing that you need to do whenever you upload this into the studio is you're going to need to right click and hit Release Compound Path. Now this looks like it just got a lot more difficult to use. Obviously you can tell that the holes are just not connected. Nothing looks right, like you'd be able to use this. So what I always do to make this just a ton easier and quicker to use is that I will, for example, grab all of this black stuff, everything that I know is black in the SVG. You can always, of course, use the image from which you downloaded to compare. And then I select it and I make it a compound path. Now with that, you can always go ahead and add a fill color to make it look the same. And you can right away tell how it just looks so much better. And it's starting to look like the SVG. So you would do the same thing with the word y'all, for example. Let's just go ahead and select the word y'all. And then go ahead and right click, of course. And let me just make sure that I got all of those elements. And I did. So y'all, right click, make compound path, and then select black as fill again. And we're doing pretty good, right? It's starting to look just like the SVG file would. So there I just did the little glass. a little martini glass or a little margarita glass. And now finally, let's just do the word Friday. And for this, sometimes you end up selecting multiple things. Remember that you can just hit shift and then click on the word that you want to not select and it will work perfectly for you. Right click on the word Friday and hit make compound path, and let's choose a lime green for that. We know that this is lime green, of course. And then let's go ahead and do the lime. Now, if I was going to cut this and put it on a white shirt, then these little bits of the lime, they can be left invisible, basically. I only have to cut out the green, right? Because you'll be able to see through to the white, and obviously we want white there. Now, if you were going to cut this and put it on a different color shirt, for example, on a black shirt, and you wanted the lime to still have those things as white, the little bits, then you would just go ahead and group those by hitting shift and selecting them. And then you can make that a compound path, and then I would make those a color white, and of course the lime would be green as well. So it works like that, and that's just perfect. If you were not going to be putting this on a white shirt, you would just go ahead and move these and cut those in white vinyl when you were ready to cut. Okay. All right. Whereas if you were going to put this on a white shirt, just to verify, you would just cut this as one. You can see in the cut settings what this will look like, and it will cut out those holes for you. I hope that makes sense to you guys. All right, and so from here, you're basically, back to where we started with SVG. It pretty much looks the same. To be able to cut this out in different colors now, I'm going to get rid of the SVG because we're pretty much done with our comparison now. Just right click it and hit delete. And now what I would do is that if I was going to cut this in separate colors, once again, let me just kind of show you how I would lay this out on the mat. And I do this not because it's easier to do it this way, but because it saves on vinyl. And I do not like to waste vinyl at all. All right, so the first thing that I would do, of course, is cut out the white. If I was going to do this on a black shirt, let's just try to do it, the most complicated way possible so that you can learn everything that you need to learn. And what I would do is that I would, place this right here, and then I would move everything else out of my mat because obviously that is my only white thing that I'm cutting. Okay, and then I would just go ahead and mirror this. So the one thing is that if you're going to be, for example, cutting this and you're going to use regular vinyl, 651, which is like a permanent vinyl that you can go ahead and put like on glasses and stuff like that, then you don't need to mirror anything. But if you are going to cut this to put on a t-shirt, you always, before you cut, you want to make sure to select what you're about to cut, go to Object, Mirror, and flip this horizontally. Now I know that it doesn't make any sense, to kind of do this with these little bits for the line because, obviously, you can always place them differently. It doesn't really matter because they're kind of symmetrical already. But in my case, I just want to make sure, that everything is cut correctly. So I would flip this horizontally. I would keep on, with the selection. I would go to cut. I would go ahead and make sure that it's showing my cut lines. Let me just see here. Sometimes it acts a little funky, but there we go. So now you see that these little bits are going to cut. I would then go down, of course, select heat transfer vinyl if that's what you're going to be using. And you would use flocked. You can see right here where it says flocked. You would use flocked for glitter vinyl, and then you would use smooth for just your regular vinyl. Okay, and then just go ahead and send to the Silhouette cutting machine. Now on your mat, you would go ahead and just put a little bit of white, on the corner to be able to cut this out. And to make this even easier for myself, I usually go to View, Show Grid, and it kind of shows you the squares of how much vinyl to place. And you would just kind of match this with your mat as you would like it. Another thing that I kind of wanted to address while I'm right here with the grid is, and let me just go ahead and flip this back. Give me just one moment. I'm just going to flip this back and I'm going to put it back on my lime, okay? We'll just put it there. So another thing that I wanted to address with the grid that I get asked a lot is what size should I cut it in? Now what I usually do is that when I have the design just like this on my mat, is that I take my mat, my physical mat, and I put it on the item. I hover it over the item that I want to put my design on. So for example, let's just talk about a shirt, right? And like, let's just say that this is going to go on a small adult shirt. So you would take out your small adult shirt, you would put your mat on it, and you would kind of be able to gauge how big you need this design to be. This is kind of a normal size, I would think, you know, and I try to make all of my designs be about as normal as possible. But if you need to get this bigger, then obviously just select it all and use these little marks to go ahead and pull it to be bigger. And of course, you know, obviously I know it doesn't fit on the mat right now, but you know, you need to know that it's going to cut in a different way. So the size doesn't really matter. Not not as long as, you know, you stay within a decent range. So, for example, let's leave it like this size. So, and let's go ahead and continue. So at this point, you've already cut your little um, line bits. Now let's go ahead and work on the green stuff. So for the green, you would go ahead and move over the word Friday. You would go ahead and move this part over and then this line over. And what I like to do is I like to find a way where I can save the most amount of heat transfer. So in this case, for example, I would cut out, and if you can follow my mouse, I would cut out a piece of vinyl that would end at this square, so at the third one from the right, and then I would kind of go all the way down here, for example, cut from here, and so I would have, you know, this much vinyl on my mat, and so you avoid wasting a whole sheet this way. All right, so and that would be, you know, good for the green. Again, just remember to go to objects and mirror this if it's going to be on heat transfer. And then once you're done with that, of course, move it to the side, and then comes the black part, you know, and then you would just do this until you were done cutting all of your pieces. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, when I do this, how am I going to align this once I'm done cutting everything and place it on my item? How am I going to layer this? Is it going to be difficult? Is there anything special that I need to do? And the answer is no. So once you're done cutting all of your pieces, once you've sent them to your machine and you've cut them and you weeded them out, what you will do is that you will take some scissors, and if you can again follow my mouse, you would cut, for example, for this martini glass, I would cut here and then I would cut in between the letters right there and kind of cut out this piece. And so now I have my little martini glass cut out. Then I would take my scissors once again and I would cut out following my mouse through here and separate this element out. And I would kind of separate all of my elements out until I had them all individually set out. What I would then do, and let me just go back to what my original design looked like before I cut it. And what I would then do is go ahead and take my garment, so for example my t-shirt, since that's kind of what I'm talking about right now, that you would be placing this on, and I would go ahead and get a good gauge as to how it was centered on the product. So I would just want to make sure, you know, that it's nice and centered on my shirt, just like that. And I would kind of just layer all my pieces so that I know exactly where they go. And then let's just say, you know, that I decided that the most centered piece is going to be the word it's. So I would go ahead and remove all of my pieces off of my shirt, except for the word it's, and I would iron that on first. After that, you know, you can kind of tell what comes after that. So after that, I think the word Friday would be the best to be able to place. And I would go ahead and place the word Friday and heat transfer that on, iron that on. And then I would probably finish out with the word y'all, you know, and then I would do the martini glass and so forth. And so you want to go ahead and when you're adding different elements like this, you want to be careful and you want to add as many as you can without any of the transfer paper. And the transfer paper is actually that clear paper that's on with your heat transfer vinyl. You want to make sure that that paper does not overlap with anything else because sometimes it can get stuck underneath vinyl and then you've kind of ruined the shirt. So just make sure that you iron on as few elements as possible so as to assure that that transfer paper doesn't touch anything else that may have vinyl over it. Okay, and I hope that that makes sense to you guys. But if it doesn't, again, just let me know. And so from here, you're pretty much ready to go. I hope that that has helped you guys to figure out how to use your DXF file to kind of make it look almost like an SVG in Silhouette Studio, the basic free edition, as well as how you can cut in different colors and layer your items with different colors on your garments. If there's anything else that you guys need, once again, feel free to reach me. I'm always available through social media at my group, which is Perfect Stylish Cuts SVG. Feel free to join that. Feel free to download this free file. I will go ahead and link to it in the description to this video just to let you guys know where you can find it. It's such a popular design and I just can't help but love it. Again, if there's anything else at all that you need, don't hesitate to ask. My name is Adalia from perfectstylishcuts.com, and I do hope that you have a great day.